All right, seeing as we have everybody here, I'd like to call the September 15th, 2020 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. I only have one announcement, and that is in recognition of Wayne Hickey, the alternate electrical inspector. We have a certificate of appreciation for Wayne for his 7 years as the Douglas Electrical Inspector and 30 years as the alternate electrical inspector for the Douglas Building Department. All right. I don't have anything else. Anybody else have anything for announcements? Okay.
Nope.
So we'll move right into our first agenda item, which is a hearing. New liquor license application for the Easy Mart and possible votes. And we have Tanya from the Easy Mart. Come on up, Tanya.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Good.
I think everyone knows me here. I've been at Citgo for over 30 years. When Diggers moved out, we found out there was a beer and wine license. We would love to apply for it. I want to thank Susan. She was such great help with the application. I don't think I could have done it without her. There was a lot of footwork. I had to get all the cashiers tip certified. I had to have an architect come down, do prints for the store. And that is why I'm here.
All right. So, and it says in the memo, you guys open at 5 a.m. However, by law, you cannot be prohibited from selling between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., so just before 8.
Have we considered this before?
We
We actually
have, when
twice
Diggers
went
was
for it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's been, I think, twice previous that we've considered this.
Yeah, and the reason that we had turned them down on the last one was the proximity to Diggers, like you could have thrown a softball
Yeah,
from.
between Diggers and Douglas package.
If I remember, oh, go ahead, Tim, I'm sorry.
No, let's go, you, please.
If I remember correctly, what we have to decide is whether there is a need. Is that the standard? Okay. To make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I see no reason not to grant the liquor license. So, because I know that usually it helps with fair competition, having a couple of them in the downtown area, and with Diggers moving up towards more of the center of town and across from the fire station, it's not really Diggers anymore, it's Family Convenience. I think it may be a benefit to have a second one down there. What do you think, Mike?
No, I think the major argument I had, or concern I had last time, was its proximity to Diggers. I think now that Diggers is no longer there and their license has moved to Family Convenience, I'm not sure I have an objection any longer.
How about you, Dave?
I would just add a little bit on to what Mr. Hughes said. I think my objection before was totally related on the fact that the standard was, is there a need? And there didn't seem to be one with another one so close, but that's no longer the case. And I'll also say, very good job filling out all this paperwork. I
Oh, my
know
goodness.
in the past, in the first application, there was a delay in getting some of it. And it appears it's all done right the first time around. I know how difficult that is.
Thank you.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I don't have any objections to the issuance.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I actually represented the town with the ABCC when we rejected the first. Now I've reversed, and I'm in agreement with the other members to support the application. I think it makes nice sense, and the objection that we had, that has been removed with the transfer of the liquor license up the street.
All right. Thank you, Hal. Awesome, thank you. Tim?
Ditto. Right, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right.
Really
Well,
appreciate it.
Before you vote, just to remind you, it's a public hearing, so you...
Yes. Is there anyone here to speak on this?
No.
Seeing as none.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Can I have a roll call vote?
Mike Hughes, aye?
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
Congratulations.
Thank
No,
you
actually, we
very
just
much.
closed.
We just closed the
public
hearing.
Yeah.
Now,
I take it back, that was premature, wait about one.
Dave
I'll make a-
always celebrates too early.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the liquor license application as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Hughes, aye.
Bonin, aye.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morse, aye.
Now,
Now, congratulations.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you,
as well.
Tanya.
Competition downtown.
That's always a good thing.
always a good thing.
All right, so we at 7:15 or not quite?
708.
7:08.
Let's study pavement.
All right, yeah, we'll go to the 2020 pavement management study and possible votes. Come on up. You just gonna hang out back there, Adam?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Good evening.
Hey, John.
Evening, Joe.
This is Bill, and I'm not going to butcher your last name, so I'm going to let you say it.
Yep, no, thank you. My name is Bill Scarpati with Stantec Consultant Services. We just performed the recent pavement management study. Got some hard copy reports. I trust most of the board members have seen the electronic report. There's a small, brief
Awesome, thank you.
PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to go through. Hopefully you got that okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think I have it in my, do we have it on thumb drive or PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I actually have it on the phone. Wasn't sure, I emailed it, but it's back up.
I can show you how to set that up.
Oh, no.
You see the shirt?
Oh, no.
All right.
Yeah, the shirt matches the computer.
Do you know what a professional is? An amateur that takes money.
Or a lawyer.
Here we go.
Should say Douglas presentation.
All right.
Do you have a hard copy?
This one? This is everything you sent us.
Yeah, it's just a report. Yeah.
Adam, you want to
Perhaps a
fix
little
this computer?
cartoon with some music that would fill
You got that sheet of paper?
fill the empty space.
Don't give me a hard time now. Yes. Okay. You may want to have him do that. Yeah. Okay.
While we do this, I'm going to ask John, was this the best reading you've ever seen? Like, as a superintendent, does this
This,
super duper interest you?
yeah, very
Yeah.
much.
That's compelling.
You know, I'll talk a little bit about how we got to this point over the last 10 years and all the money we've spent on the bridges,
Yeah.
you know. I've got a handout here I'll send out after Bill's done.
Huh? Somebody's sharing.
Spaces is sharing your screen.
Yeah, all right. Hal, are you able to see that at home?
His mic's off.
Yeah, I'm not gonna stop him from sharing.
See it.
You are able to see it or no?
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent, good. Okay.
Good for that.
I want to test something, make sure that's... Make sure you can scroll through it. Yes, ma'am, Jim.
Okay, so let's, we'll go to the next slide here. Got maybe arrow up, arrow down. Next. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to go through this quick 5-point agenda, talk a little bit about the pavement management study, methodology, philosophy, discuss our findings, recommendations in the report, review some of the budget scenarios, and then open it up to questions. Next. So Stantec conducted a townwide pavement inventory on 83 public roadway miles. This included public accepted and public unaccepted streets. We broke out all the streets into smaller pavement management segments or project limits where you could do future work. The limits were broken down by material, condition, and maybe age. We've recorded things like the to, the from, the street name, the length, the width. For all these segments, we then did a pavement distress identification and quantification. So we closely documented the severity and extent of possible distresses such as alligator cracking, transverse longitudinal cracking, potholes, and whatnot. In addition to the pavements, we also evaluated the sidewalks, pedestrian ramps, signs, sign supports. So we kind of got a good feel for all the surface feature transportation assets. That's all put into GIS, which the town will get a copy of. So based on all those, that data collection, we then calculated what we call a pavement condition index. It's a PCI score on a 0 to 100 scale for all these streets, all these segments. 0 being a road that's a bomb that's nearly impassable, and 100 being a road that's in excellent condition. And then we also, all this data was put into a pavement management modeling software. And we also calculated what we call a network priority ranking. So we can't fix all the streets all at once. So what's the best street to repair first? So we created this NPR value, which looks at ADT, traffic volume, functional class. So if you got 2 streets with equal PCIs, the one that would have higher traffic would get picked first, therefore benefiting more people. Next. So this slide illustrates the life of a pavement as it relates PCI over time. So during the pavement's life, it goes through what we call intervention phases or treatment bands, PCI treatment bands. So up at the top, you got streets that are in excellent condition, require no immediate maintenance. You've got streets that appear in the routine maintenance band, which is streets that are in need of crack sealing, maybe some skin patching, low cost investment, anywhere between 50 cents to $1.50 a square yard. Roads that fall on the preventative maintenance treatment band, this is where you've got preservation treatments that you can do. Perhaps you go in and you do some full depth patching on some soft areas, come back with an extensive crack seal, bless you, and then come back and do a surface treatment. So the whole idea is you want to preserve the streets and then bump them up a little bit. Cost here range anywhere between $4.50 and $7.50 a square yard. The structural improvement band is where streets are in poor condition. These are streets where we do resurfacing, mill and fill, grind and inlay, coal planing, overlaying, those type of things. Not just to seal the surface, but to provide added strength to resist traffic loading. Costs here range anywhere between $16 up to $22 a square yard. And then finally, you get roads during that base rehabilitation that have failed in need of, pulverization, reclamation, reconstruction. Cost can range anywhere between $35 up to $65 a square yard. So the whole idea is when a road deteriorates, it costs more and more. Next. So these are just some treatment ban examples in town. We'll go to 98, do nothing, Webster Street. Not paved not too long ago. Here we got U Street from Southeast Main Street to Glen Street, PCI of 85. This is a classic street that's in need of some crack sealing to seal up the cracks, prevent water intrusion, protect that underlying base. Here we've got preventative maintenance, PCI 60, Locust Street, got some crack sealing that has been done. There's some new cracks appearing. You've got some isolated base-related type distresses like alligator cracking. This is a great street to come back, touch up on the crack sealing, and then come back with what we call a rubber chip seal to really put a waterproof membrane on top of that pavement. Next. So here's PCI 38, Linden Street from Southeast Main to the Uxbridge Town line. So this is what we call a structural improvement. So again, crack sealing been done, trying to hold it together. A lot more alligator cracking. Also in the wheel paths, you can see some of that's occurring. So that's a good indication that there's probably not enough material as far as the pavement thickness and poor base barriers. So water's getting in there. This is a great street to do a deep mill, maybe mill 2-3 inches and then come back. Since there's no curb reveal here, this is probably something you guys would consider overlaying as well. Dragging level, overlay it, bring the profile up, help the roadside drainage. And then last, we've got the most expensive repair, so base rehabilitation, PCI of 11, Fairbanks Court, clearly, this is the street that's plagued with alligator cracking, base-related distresses, drainage issues. Water's not able to escape off the pavement, getting trapped along the edge and softening up that edge. And, New England freeze-thaw cycles, the road's just falling apart.
I want to stop you there to let you know that that's my football field, right there in that road.
Literally.
Yeah, right across the street.
So there's probably loam under there. Okay, so as of today, we determined, just click one more time, we determined the average pavement condition index in the town of Douglas to be at 54.3. Okay, next. One more time. There we go. So how does Douglas compare to its neighbors? Not so good. I mean, there's a couple of neighbors that are in better condition as far as good PCI versus the fair PCI. So Douglas definitely has work to do. Next. So this bar chart breaks down the 83 public roadway miles that we inventoried by treatment band. So you can see the largest band is up in the structural improvement band at 25.1. The second one is 20 miles in need of preventative maintenance. I guess the good news here is you only have 9.8 miles in base rehab, but there's definitely still some work to be done. Next. So today, Douglas's roadway backlog stands at about $16 million. This is the cost of bringing up all the streets to a near-perfect condition within 1 year. It represents how far behind the network is in terms of its current present condition today. These costs only include the pavement. So from curb to curb, top of pavement to the bottom of the foundation. Does not include drainage, sidewalk, curbing, signs, signals, and so forth. So this is just the pavement cost only. You can also see here that's staggering. Back up. There was 82% of the backlog is in need of capital type repairs, a structural improvement in your base rehabilitation. So definitely some work there. So this is just, talking about the pavement management theory. During the first 75% of a road's life, it will experience a 40% drop in quality, and then in just a short 12%, another 40% drop. So it's doing the right things. Unfortunately, in Douglas, this really hasn't been happening for quite a number of years. You're not alone. A lot of towns in this region, in the state of Massachusetts, have the same problem. But it's time to really take a serious look at the road network and what's being invested. Next. So here's a histogram of how the network is distributed today by miles over increments of PCI of 5. So you can see that there's a good wide distribution of mileage, but what we're trying to do is to apply what we call the bottom of the band strategy. So you have piles of streets that are in, on the threshold of crossing into another more expensive repair band. So we want to focus on those bottom of the band streets going forward. But right away, you can see, starting next year, if we're going to make any progress, we've got to resurface at least 4 miles of roadway, and we've got to do at least some type of surface treatment on 3 miles of streets that are in need of preservation maintenance in that 50 band. The whole idea is to make repairs, bring them up to the do-nothing condition category, and try to have a desired trend that shows more mileage onto the right side of the chart there. Next. So Stantec evaluated 6 different funding scenarios. 10-year scenarios. The first one is what we call the zero funding. What happens, if we do nothing? Worst case scenario, what happens to the PCI and the backlog over time? The second thing we looked at was the historical budget. Looked at it 2 ways, $360,000 a year. The first approach is kind of the worst first approach. Naturally, the worst streets that people are complaining about, you go out and fix those first, what happens, and then applying that sort of bottom of the band pavement management strategy, spending the same amount of money but a little differently. And then what we quickly realized is this money is inadequate to maintain today's PCI of 54. So we looked at another funding scenario. What does it take to maintain today's PCI? And you're looking at $1.26 million a year just to maintain the 54 the way it is today. Then we said, well, we want to see an improvement, because the more we improve, the lower cost our future costs are going to be. It's just going to be that less expensive to maintain and preserve. So we looked at a 1.17 million, and that looks to spend 17 million over the 10 years. And then lastly, we looked at what we call a progressive funding scenario, which is sort of a one-time borrowing of, front-loaded scenario where we would inject 4.5 million in the first 4 years, scale back to 3.4, and then return to a budget just a little less than Chapter 90 today to basically sustain the network at a low cost. Next. So this is just the average PCI projections from those 6 scenarios. You can see the 54 off to the left, and the bottom line is that worst first or zero scenario where it goes to 21. The red and orange, the 2 upper lines above that, are the today's current allotment, and just, it's pretty dramatic. The way you spend that money is a big impact. PCI of 41 versus 28, and then the blue and green are the maintain the PCI and then improve the PCI scenarios. And then that gray one is that front-loaded scenario that gets the network back up into reasonable condition, near excellent condition. Next. And then this line chart very similarly explains, shows the backlog, what's happening over the backlog over the 10-year period. So up at the top, you've got the do nothing, zero budget, PCI or backlog balloons from 16 million to 51 million. You got your two maintain PCI equilibrium scenarios. And then you've got that front-loaded scenario that really drives the backlog down, hits it hard in the beginning, and then more or less stabilizes that backlog. Next. So in conclusion, the town of Douglas, back one, here we go. Town of Douglas really needs to increase its roadway funding. Chapter 90 is not enough. We're recommending at a minimum, 1.26, consider up to 1.7 per year to start to, improve it. Investigate a one-time borrowing. Some communities have been successful with that. It depends on the timing of the community, with other needs and not overextending your borrowing and, you can't take on a big mortgage. It's got to be reasonable. But definitely explore that as stakeholders of the roadway network. In the meantime, continue to practice routine preventative maintenance, continue crack sealing the town, which has been doing. Spend at least $50,000 a year on a crack seal program. Roadside drainage improvements going to go a long way, blading the edge of the roads, where we don't have adequate drainage, open those up, let the water bleed off, protect the roads. Look at chip sealing, low-cost surface treatments, durable, where you got some pavements that are cracked, but, you can put down a surface treatment to improve rideability, seal up some of the roads until additional funding is available. And then lastly, just continue the pavement management process. It is a process, you've got a good baseline of what you have. It's all in GIS. It's very interactive in terms of looking at the data and planning your program. Start to set goals, monitor your progress, log those results, and with that, done, and I'll open it up for questions.
So is it safe to assume that based off of the analysis that you did, not really taking into assumptions, but if the Farmer's Almanac is right this year, and we have an abnormally harsh winter, those roads are going to degrade much faster than what's anticipated on this study? Is that a fair assumption?
The deterioration curves we use are pretty aggressive, so they do factor in the harsher winters more so. But yeah.
So, because I know Douglas is known for potholes that you can lose a small car in.
At times.
Yeah, no one's in the room. You do a great job, John.
John does do a good job, but I mean, he's used to
teasing.
the phone calls that show up of like, hey, I just lost my Honda on West Street.
I'm
so.
teasing you.
It's all good.
Where would we find the money for this?
It would be the $64 question.
Right?
What's that, Chapter 90?
Around
360?
Yeah.
And we should be at 1.26 to 1.7, so we're way short.
Well, we only got to come up with another $1.25 million.
Oh,
What
put
if-
it like that.
Exactly.
How favorable are bond terms right now?
I suppose I should take the microphone away from you. So this is a valuable conversation, right? Because this is sobriety, this is where the proverbial rubber hits the road, right? It's very easy to neglect an asset that doesn't age visibly to the common person's eye year over year. And then all of a sudden, you have this big problem that materializes. You're not all the way down to the bottom of that curve yet, but you're approaching it. And food for thought, you have debt rolling off, you have debt exclusion rolling off in fiscal '23. Maybe any number of reasons why you would either backfill that with additional borrowing, because it wouldn't change the tax rate experienced by the taxpayer. But you may have other competing projects too. I mean, John needs a barn to put the equipment in to take care of the roads. So there are these different things that come up. But certainly, when you look at the markets, now's the time to borrow. Probably in the next year or two is the time to borrow, because you can't really forecast where the economy is going to be after that. Whether all this money that's been released into the economy to prop things up is going to create inflationary pressure. The way to control that is the rates will go up. So we're in a sort of a unique place right now when it comes to being able to borrow to address roads. The alternative, of course, is to continue to grow the economic base of the town and to generate enough free cash and stable cash flow year over year by holding the line on operational expenses and be able to invest in capital. I think of roads as capital. It's a capital asset, probably the most important asset you have, certainly the most expensive. That's the quick answer is it took us, 3 years to build free cash of a little over $1.5 million. You could spend all of that in 1 year and still not crack the nut for that the year you're in. So that's not going to be the solution. Continuing to save or call it accidental revenues, isn't going to solve the problem. You need a program. I've worked in communities where this isn't addressed, and it really does materialize like this. You know, you get to that bottom, and it's all of a sudden you have $60 million worth of road work to do and no plan. And all the cheap and easy fixes are gone. This crack sealing a road that's already fallen apart doesn't do anything.
Just off the cuff, my thought, if we did end up having to go to a borrowing, is you'd probably want to structure it so you're doing a highway barn on the roads in one shot, as opposed to trying to take 2 bites at the apple with that. Because I know we do talk a lot about, like, we're very key on public safety, but if there's no infrastructure to get the public safety vehicles around, then how much good are we really doing?
Let's say in a perfect world, we borrow enough in 1 year or 2 years to get this to a point where almost everything's in the top band or group. I think one of the things we need to do is then project what our yearly output has to be to keep that from just falling off and falling back down over a period of, say, 10 years. And it kind of makes the borrowing look insignificant, for want of a better term. And I think it would take some more number crunching than we have the time or ability to do tonight, but I'm not sure that Chapter 70 will cover it. Chapter 90, I'm sorry. Chapter 90 will cover it. In other words, even if we get to a state of perfection through borrowing, which probably isn't likely anyway, how long before we have to supplement Chapter 90 anyway?
Yeah. Another way to look at it is that not all roads are created equal. So Fairbanks is one thing, but the traffic it carries doesn't compare to North Street or South Street. I think we talk about South Street a lot.
Once a week.
Yes, it's
You
probably.
get a call, I get a call.
It seems like actually it's kind of a curse to be a directional name, right? So between South Street, West Street, North Street, those are 3 really tough roads.
Yep.
And they take a lot of traffic.
Right.
And you would go a long way towards what I would guess would be public satisfaction if you were able to address those roadway conditions, because to get to all the side streets, you have to traverse one of those major roads.
Right.
The school buses travel those major roads. God knows how much truck traffic we're going to have, we already have. So you might go a long way towards selling the program by finding the low-hanging fruit and really going full bore at it and do it right. And people can see that you're serious, and then they might have more of an appetite to have a discussion about the smaller roads after that. But certainly, we're not going to get very far if those roads continue to disintegrate because of the sheer number of cars that go over them every single day.
I mean, right now, we have Chapter 90 balance of $870,000, but 430 we're projecting has to go to the Cedar Street Bridge coming up.
Right.
You know, we got the $500,000 grant for that, but we have to supplement the other funds, as I've done in the last 10 years. I've got a handout here that you can see how much, we spent $1.2 million in bridges in the last 10 years, and that should have been paving money. But we need the bridges open so we can drive over them, you know, so that's half the Chapter 90 money in the last 10 years have gone to bridges, so.
You've done a good job at holding it together with what we have, though, John.
Are there any other bridges in the foreseeable future?
Well, honestly, like, we've spent $250,000 on the North Street Bridge, but you would never know it by driving over the top of it,
Right.
because it's not wide enough.
Yeah.
The guardrails aren't sufficient, and so on, you know? So that's a multi-million-dollar job, you know, at some point. Hemlock Street Bridge is completely rebuilt. None of us will ever have to worry about that bridge. Cedar Street will be the same way when that's done. South Street Bridge was quite a rehab, so I think we're good for, I'd say, 20 more years at least there. And then we have Potter Road Bridge, which is still a wooden structure. It's getting 4s and 5s from the state, which isn't the best rating on a bridge, but it services 3 homes on the other side.
Yeah.
You know, so we've got time on that bridge.
Right.
So in the spring, I'll have probably around 400,000 plus next year's Chapter 90 money, which is another 360. So we could have like 750 next year to do some paving anyway, you know.
Is any of that estimated 750 committed to anything, any other repairs?
Not at this time.
Okay,
Yep,
Subject to change.
yeah. Dale?
correct.
And if the winter's as harsh as you seem to think it'll be.
I'm willing to bet it will be.
I'm not going to bet against that.
No, I mean, it sounds like we definitely have to do something, like start planning when we really start getting into next year's budget and find some way that we can do better than just Chapter 90, because you can't just, I mean, as good as John is and as hard as he's working, there's just not enough time or materials to be able to keep up with it. And it's just going to get worse.
It is.
If we come out of the winter with no further disasters, you know, bridges or anything like that, I mean, that's a good start if we have 800.
Absolutely.
800 plus
Absolutely.
to put towards this.
It tends to do the most traveled roads first.
Right.
Well, those would probably be your higher expense ones, too.
Correct, because you need a bigger base, you need, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, if it turns into like a 5-year plan and we knock out the larger, busier roads and then kind of pick a few of the side streets to work on years after, that might make sense.
And some of these roads, you know, we're just getting this now, like you folks have. We need to sit down with the water department and figure out, before we pave a road, let's make sure the water, you know, utilities are good, you know?
Right. I do like the idea of a multi-year plan, because I think it would allow us to kind of ramp up or ramp down, depending if something else happened that would interfere with our projected spending for that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no easy solution. You know, there's a lot of cut-through roads here, there's growth, there's more traffic, you know, people are driving more and more. And, you know, especially trucks, heavy trucks. One heavy truck is equivalent to 2,000 cars in the pavement design world, and they just wreak havoc on the roadways. So, you know, there's you got to pay attention to those things. There's certainly, you know, there's not a lot of digging in the streets, but you can enforce a utility cut ordinance, you know. That's a possibility, but, you know, there needs to be a lot of utility cuts. It's more of an urban community that's a strategy. It doesn't really apply here, but it could be considered. But yeah, really looking at kind of a hybrid. You know, maybe it's a borrowing against a debt, but also a borrowing where, you know, everyone's taxes go up 50, $100, you know, is it worth it, you know?
You don't say
mean,
that loud in Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a difficult
I
sell.
mean, you gotta
I'll be
put
in
it
the
in
back.
front of them, you know? But, you know, when you invest in roads, it could return an economic return on that investment, you know? It's like the Complete Streets type program. You know, you're getting the universal design, you're getting more people out there trying to, you know, stir up economic development, which could be something that can happen.
Well, you got Bob and Eric smiling right there.
Good.
So I think this is something we need to sit down and address and really start looking at over the next few meetings, or as we get closer towards doing another budget, or at least looking and tweaking our budget.
Right.
Anybody have anything else?
Anything you'd like to see from us tonight, other than,
No, just if you'd study the document, have any questions, you know, let us know. Just asking for the support on trying to get some funding so we can improve our roads. I know Matt gets calls weekly, I do, and if I had the money, folks, I would pave every road next week, you know, so we just got to come up with the funding, that's all.
Right.
Or be thrifty with the funding we have and get creative.
You always stretch a dollar, John. We know this.
There you go.
is there any state support that can happen when our, was it the PCI? When that number gets sub 45 or something?
I mean, there's a lot of advocates that are pushing for, you know, the increase in Chapter 90, the gas tax. There's people against it for it. There's certainly grants out there. Complete Streets is one of them, you know, where you can get $400,000 in construction dollars per year, you know, based on that plan. You know, it's just like anything we own, you know, it's like changing the oil in your car. It's pay me now, pay me later. It's that's what this is. And, you know, it's what you want to make of it. But yeah, unfortunately, you know, Chapter 90 is great, but a lot of the smaller towns, they get left, you know, holding the bag on this, and, you know, it's their network. You know, you got to be careful. Sometimes it's a road isn't an asset, it's a liability. You know?
Let's put in a toll road.
Yep, toll booths, absolutely.
So,
Like downtown Main Street. Do you remember what that scored? Like the,
In the center of town, actually, it didn't score too bad. They called for crack sealing, and actually, the last week we did it. It was just our scheduled time of the year, and we did our $50,000 worth of crack sealing,
Yeah.
just in the center of town. But there's other, you know, from Cottage Street down to North Street.
yeah, I just wondered, that's a state road technically, right?
No,
No?
no,
All right.
not that.
So when does it state road? That's,
none of it,
They gifted it to us,
16?
didn't they?
none of it.
You're a happy recipient of a gift.
a recent gift?
Oh, gosh, maybe 2000, when we built the new high school.
All right, well, but we paved 16 without town.
That was a safety audit that they did and deemed it a safety issue, that whole road, and
Okay.
they funded the whole project.
That was
That was more of a redesign accompanied by paving,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
They widened it out and then trimmed everything
More
back.
guardrails.
Right,
Yeah.
cut some trees for us and straightened out a few things, some drainage. Yeah,
They gave us
that's,
16 saying congratulations on
well,
the school.
we owned it then. We still owned it then. The state road in town is Manchog Road from after the Mechanic Street Bridge all the way to Millbury. That's the only state road in town.
Okay.
There was a short section of Davis Street. When we built the high school, they redid it and then handed it over to us.
How kind of them.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So we will circle back to the hearing on new flammable storage land use, Lake Manchog Campground, and possible votes. Is there anyone here for that? Anyone online for that?
William and Karen Starrick are the owners.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi. This is Bill Starr.
Good.
Hi, Bill, how are you?
Good, from Lake Manchog Camping. I was just calling to see if there was any questions. I know I'm calling a little late, but I get tied up with people at the office here.
Oh, no, it's quite all right.
Understood.
We're running a little behind ourselves.
Oh, good, it works.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
It's been a busy day.
Flying goose. I don't have anything in here. Do you have?
I have it, yeah. Do you want it?
Yeah, can I see that really quickly?
Yeah.
So essentially, they need a license for
It's not right
tenants
there.
propane tanks.
Thanks. All right. Store flammables. All right, are there any abutters that are here to speak on this?
Yeah.
Oh, no worries. So, and Matt, are we where the fire chief has gone up and done inspections and looked into this?
And we opened the public hearing?
I think we just did.
We just did, yes, Al.
Okay.
And Chief Vincent, are you on? There he is. So, have you gone up and inspected and taken a look at the expansion?
What this is not just one big tank. Usually you have 125 or 100 gallon tanks that are on different campsites. They have never reached the threshold before of 2,000 where they need a license. So that's why they didn't have a license. Now, if they're gonna go over 2,000, they have to have a license, and they also have to have a storage permit from the fire department. I looked in with the state fire marshal, they didn't have an issue with it. Now, if it was a 2,000 gallon tank going in one spot, that'd be one thing.
Right.
It's smaller tanks that are spread throughout the campground, and I don't see it as an issue. And like I said, I checked in with the state fire marshal as well for a little bit of guidance, because we hadn't been there before. Like I said, they got notified by their company that they had hit the 2,000 threshold. We just had to look into issuing them a license, having them decide how much more they did. So I don't foresee us being at this point again for quite some time, especially with, like I said, it's specific to campsites. So most of the time you don't have a 60 or 50 or 100 gallon tank.
Right.
All right.
I think Shirley has to say something, wants to say
Yeah.
something.
And Shirley, you're in a butter?
Cheers.
I think you're muted, Shirley.
Can you unmute her?
Oh, there she
There we
is.
go.
So,
I think, can you hear me now?
yes.
Shirley Mazinski, 60 Oak Street. I am an abutter to Bill and Karen. I think the notice was misleading because it looked like it was going to be one big tank. And my question was going to be, where is this tank going to be situated? So if it's individual or smaller tanks, then, and I understand what Ken has said. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Shirley. Anybody have any questions?
I don't. It's just, it's campground, people have propane
Love
tanks.
propane, exactly.
And I think in all my time here, this is the first time the campground has actually been before us on any issue, which is somewhat remarkable.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Anybody want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Mike Hughes, aye?
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Anybody want to make a
I'll make a
motion?
motion that we approve the flammable storage land use license as presented for Lake Manchac Campground.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, roll call vote, please.
Hughes, aye?
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Okay, so that takes care of that. So that brings us to Flying Goose Host Community Agreement request and possible votes.
Okay, so I'm all set here, right?
Yes, you are, thank you.
Have a good night.
You're welcome. Yep, thank you guys, and we'll see you someday.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Rich?
Peter Kasabian, I'm with Flying Goose, and
Okay.
Richard is on Zoom.
Hi, I'm here with Chris. Thank you for having us back.
Good evening. All right. Yeah, please.
Okay, good. Thanks for having us back. Like I said, if you remember, we were originally on the agenda back in late spring, and we're here to address some of the board's concerns that we, possibly acting as a broker, and only wanted to get the license to sell it. And also, we have another project in Holyoke that we weren't going to see through, and that it was going to die on the vine. Not sure where that came from or where that information came from, but it definitely couldn't be further from the truth. We did have a host community agreement in Uxbridge that we did sell. Wasn't our intention to sell it. We had 3 licenses that was spread over 2 buildings. The rent was considerable at the time, and but even then, we had full intentions on building both facilities out and seeing it through and opening both of those. Somebody contacted us to purchase the licenses, and at the time, it wasn't something that we were going to do, but after we started looking at the costs associated with building out, particularly at the time the cultivation facility, we started contemplating it, and it seemed to be a better and better deal as things were moving along. And one of our landlords at the time mentioned that he had another building in Douglas at 116 Davis Street, and said, well, if you sell these licenses, just come over to Davis Street, and we'll just kind of do it over there. And it made sense to us at the time because being able to sell those licenses at the time and having to raise money for the cultivation facility, it made sense for us to sell that, and now that we can put some money in our pocket and essentially self-fund Davis Street. So again, we made a business decision at the time. It wasn't our intention to get a host agreement and sell it, but it did make sense to do that. And then Holyoke, Tigertown, which is in Holyoke, it's a retail location. I'm not sure what gave that impression that we weren't moving forward with that when in fact we actually started construction on that project today. So we did get a little bit delayed with that project due to COVID and the city hall being closed and things of that matter, but we worked as quickly as we possibly could, got our demo permits and all the other permits that we needed, and again, started construction on that project literally today. And Pete was in Holyoke today and took pictures that he can show you if needed. But, I know that those are your concerns, and I did just want to bring that up. And that's kind of how I wanted to start this off.
No, I appreciate you, clearing up some of the questions that we had, that were sitting around there. one of the things I can say that this board does do is when we do enter into agreements like this, we're looking for people that are going to be long-term partners of the town of Douglas. If we were to move forward on an HCA, I would probably want to put language into it stating that it's not to be sold or transferred. And if that, you sell your business, then that business would then be required to come in and renegotiate a new HCA with the town of Douglas.
Can you also put a time limit on it?
I don't know if we can put a time limit on them.
Maximum, you can't exceed.
I think that would be more like the CCC would be dealing with the time limit as to how long those are good for. What I did see is, it looks like you guys are willing to, on the Davis Street site, looking to just start and operate a cultivation facility there?
Cultivation and manufacturing.
All right.
And we'd like to get a host community agreement for retail as well, with a site to be determined, possibly, if that's even an option. We'd like to at least talk about it.
do that.
You've done it already.
I think you
Yeah, we have done it
already.
once.
We have?
Yep. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that there's two parts to it, too. It's like, we have the HCA, and then we also have licenses that the town issues in order to actually operate. So, I mean, that's kind of the incentive for people to go from an HCA to get their provisional from the CCC.
Yes.
And then get back in front of us to get one of the 3 licenses that we're currently holding.
Bear in mind, you only license retail.
Yep, not cultivation.
All that you need for cultivation and production, manufacturing.
Oh, I've lost track of where we are with all of it, I have to say. So, what-
I'm glad you said it, because I was afraid to say the same thing.
Oh, Mike, just speak your mind, it's okay. We've given out 2?
I think you've given out more than that.
We have, right now, I think, well, we have Resonate is one.
Resonate, well,
Talking about retail.
Retail.
so I think Z&D has 2.
Yeah,
I think there was 1 given for Webster Street,
yes, that's right.
and that hasn't been developed yet for retail.
These are HCA's for retail, correct?
Yeah, but they haven't hit a point where they're requesting a license yet.
So can we give out more?
According to the Cannabis Control Commission's latest data, only 1 of the HCA's has submitted for an application. So even though you might have handed out 2 or possibly 3, only 1 has actually moved forward and submitted the paperwork to the CCC.
Well, that's good to know.
That helps formulate my answer to the question that Selectman Hughes was about to ask. You don't want to overpopulate the world with so many HCA's that you create this sort of, it's one thing to create a race, it's another thing to create a rat race, and silliness. If you're only going to have 3 licenses for retail, and that's, retail is what we're talking about. If you're only going to have 3 licenses and you give out 6 HCA's for retail, it's one thing to have a race, but now you've created this sort of tension where everybody's trying to get to the finish line first. I personally, my recommendation would be that we shouldn't care how many cultivate HCA's you give out, or manufacturing, or delivery, or anything other than retail, because it's just business. And people are taking over a vacant building and they want to do something with it. That's an economic development tool right there, just let it happen. It's no skin off anybody's back. You know, on the retail side, you're going to have business failures, you're going to have transitions, you're going to have people who can't get their deals up because they can't raise the money. In that case, you should probably have more HCA's than retail licenses. You just have to keep a lid on it and say, so how many more than 3 would you give out? Or would you give out 4 or 5, maybe 6? But you're going to constantly adjust. Because you can give out as many HCA's as you want. You can constantly adjust based on the conditions on the ground. If the 3 that you thought were going to get to a license never get to it, well then, you just got to push them off the side and keep going until you get your 3 filled. Right now, I don't think you're overexposed at all. But I appreciate the business taking the step, saying that they don't want conflict on the street, so they look at retail elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But we really do want to encourage cultivation. It's one of the growth sectors in the economy, and it's a skill set, and everybody's Everybody seems to be perfectly happy to coexist in the cannabis world.
Definitely, absolutely.
Especially when it comes to cultivation, because you may have a strain, guy down the street's gonna have a completely different strain.
Definitely.
The consumer's taste is gonna determine what they're gonna buy at retail, but we shouldn't care. I mean, you grow San Marzano tomatoes in one warehouse
In Italy.
and beef steaks in the other, who cares, really? You know, it's all tomatoes.
Members of the board, if I can just kind of go off of what you're saying, that's exactly what our intention is. Our intention is not to come in and create some kind of panic amongst, the group that already got the host agreement. We understand there were 3 given out, 2 to one group and then 1 to the other. But as of right now, like Rich alluded to before, there's one application in with the Cannabis Control Commission for provisional license. So what we would like to do, obviously, like you said, the manufacturing and cultivation host agreements are what we're, really looking for at the 116 Davis Street. And as far as the retail goes, we're happy to have, a to-be-determined site, whether that's at 116 Davis or another location. We've been working with Bob from the town for months and months looking for an acceptable location that's not going to be, encumbering on anybody else's business or anything like that. So we would be happy to do that. And, in our opinion, we tend to agree with you that 4 host agreements could lead to 3 provisional licenses, and understanding that we're taking the risk also to say, okay, we have this host agreement, we have to do something where we have to act on it quickly, otherwise it's really going to be worthless if we don't transition that into a provisional license. Something that's, an active business. So.
Tracy Madison, 93 Davis. Are we ready to open up to speak to the public yet?
I don't think that not just yet.
And also, when you look at some of these host agreements, from what we can tell from the website, the Town of Douglas website, that they were all issued basically consecutive months, December, January, February. So the fact that only 1 has been submitted, they've been other people's inboxes for roughly 9 months without submitting an application to the CCC. So that's something that we feel as though we can act on quickly and move quickly. We're ready to go. We're well funded. We've done it before. We've done it before. We're under contract, under construction, in another location. We're aggressive and ready to go. And we're looking forward to it. And like Chris said, he's been speaking about for literally months, trying to find another. When we heard you were unhappy with the location of 116 Davis for a retail location, we immediately started looking for another location. And Bob's been tremendous in helping us find, and literally found multiple places. And we've got engineers and architects and traffic all completed, and most of them haven't worked out. And we are continuing to look, and we have identified one specific place that we like, or maybe 2 specific places that we like. So we are ready to go. We're happy with 116 Davis Street, but if we need to move the retail, we're ready to do that as well.
Well, I can say my concern wasn't so much the location. It was more the sale of the previous licenses, and I wanted to understand a little bit more about that. Simply because, like I said, we're looking for long-term partners in the town. Not somebody to come in, start, and then, bounce
Disappear.
off somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't our intention, like I mentioned, and that's certainly not our intention here either. No, I mean, somebody gives you a phone call and offers you money for something you haven't even started construction on. I'm telling you, we said no, and then eventually you say yes, and then, you speak to the landlord, and the landlord's like, well, I have another building in Davis, and then, we all get together and say, well, maybe we don't need to raise as much money because now we have money coming in from the sale. That's kind of how it happens. It happens. It's not something we were looking to do, but it happens. And to be honest with you, Holyoke is gone a lot less stressful because this is a full-time job that we're doing, and none of it is making money right now. And we need to fund these projects accordingly, but more importantly, we're all family men. The 3 of us all have families. And that it was honestly, it was great that it happened, but it's not our intention to do it again. We need something to, the fact that we're gonna have 2 retails, we need a cultivation, we need a manufacturing facility to store, to fill these retail facilities with inventory. So it is something that we're looking forward to. It is going to be one. That's our goal. And we love Douglas. It's perfect for us.
Well, I appreciate you guys at least willing to step in and clear that up. So I'm sure you can understand why it would be a little concerning to us.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I have no issues with HCA for cultivation.
No, I have no issues with that either.
And the manufacturing as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cultivation
both.
and
When I think
manufacturing.
of cultivation, we think of both.
Okay.
But yeah, we have no issues with that.
Just wanted to be clear.
And since I would be willing to
Well, my only reservation would be granting an opening to come back again for another retail location. I'd rather start with the cultivation and the manufacturing and not allow a site that's not identified as part of this package.
Okay. If I could interject to that, we definitely understand where you're coming from and respect that opinion. The one question I guess I would have for you on that point specifically only would be how long, and it's kind of an open-ended question, it's just kind of food for thought, is that how long do these other host agreements go on for before they get transferred into or turned into a provisional license? That would be the first thing. And then the second part of it is it's difficult to go and look for land, and we've been doing, like Rich said, with Bob Manarik, we've been going really all over town, like searching for properties that aren't even for sale, planning on bidding on properties that are for sale. And it's tough to do that if we don't know that we're able to get one, to get the host agreement. It's like, it's the chicken and the egg theory, so we're not sure if we're actually gonna get the host agreement. It's tough to bid in good conscience on a property that we would like to buy, and it's tough to go and which we've already done, and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on seeing if a site works for retail, given environmental, traffic, parking, and all that stuff, without knowing that we're going to have the host agreement. So those would be my 2 things. It's not a challenging question. It's a real question. How do we move forward looking for a site without that at least in our, knowing that we have the backing of Douglas for that host agreement? And then the second thing is how long do we wait on these other host agreement holders to turn them into provisional license? Like Rich said, it's been 9 months, and it doesn't take 9 months to submit an application to the CCC, especially since everybody's been in quarantine for 9 months and had plenty of time to do it.
Well, this is sort of a new frontier type of project for the town, so we want to be cautious, but I would say if you came in with 1 or 2 or even 3 possible retail sites, then we have a chance to look at that. Okay. I'm not saying no to a retail site for you. I just think, it seems to me that the first bite ought to be at the manufacturing and the grow site.
Okay.
My opinion.
Okay.
I have no problems considering an alternative site. I do have concerns about them locating at 116 Davis Street. But if they were to find an alternative site, I would support a host agreement for that.
What do you think, Tim?
And I understand sort of the chicken and the egg theory. And I think we have given somebody a license without a site. And so we've set that precedent. An ACA without a site. So we've set that precedent. So I have no problems with doing that once again.
Well, it's not a binding precedent, and I'd say, we're sort of getting our feet wet in this whole process now, so I'd say, a little caution.
But we were trying to make a market for the town's property on Webster Street. That was the idea, right? Was to create enough interest in that economic development site, attract the bids, have a real competition, and sell the property after all this time. We're trying to get it. Because the way the specs are written for the RFP, the hope would be, any economic entity that generates more than one revenue stream is more welcome than one that does not. I mean, that was tipping your hat to the idea that you wanted cannabis there. So it was a temporary policy to support a longer-term goal. Once that bidding process is resolved, the property is either sold or not sold, I think you're in a different boat then, because the town won't have property for sale. So the question will be, well, do you want to grant an HCA to somebody who doesn't have a location yet? It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And one question we had with that site was, if someone was to bid that Webster Street site, and they had, would they get a higher score if they have an existing HCA with the town? Because it's possible one of the 2 existing or 3 existing HCA holders apply at that site with their proposal.
I don't think an
Was that in
existing
there?
HCA was in the scoring on that.
No, it's not, and so the factor that would be sensitive to the process would be the time factor. You get more points if your project's ready to go than if it's not. But an HCA for this group has been boilerplate language that's been issued twice now and has been fully vetted by our attorney. We don't usually change much in that, so that could happen very quickly, and so that's not going to slow you down. Everybody, even if they already have an HCA, would still have to launch the provisional license process with
Yes.
CCC.
Absolutely.
I think I can't speak for the board, but if that was the understanding that you needed to go through the CCC process, we all know it takes a while.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay.
You know, I would think that would be fine, because
Yeah.
you're getting the project you want, what you hope for, and it comes with that constraint. Where I think the inquiry would be is, have you ever done a license before? Have you ever been before the CCC? Are you prepared? Is your application complete?
We have,
Because
yes.
it's one thing to say, we have an HCA and now we want to go get a provisional license from the CC, but it's a daunting process. So if you've never done it before in a project, the town wants a project done in 2 or 3 years, that's a hiccup, as opposed to going with a business that's already either in it or has already been through it before, you know what the lay of the land is.
Yes.
You can say, yeah, as slow as the CCCC is, I just gave them an extra C.
They'll take it.
Yeah, I guess they will. They're clumsy, whatever. You know what I'm saying, is you know the process, so as fast
We
as you
do.
can move, it will move, and you won't be part of confusion and delay because you have never done it before and your application is incomplete or inaccurate.
We've done it 5 times successfully so
Yeah.
far.
So. It's my new thing.
All right. Would anyone else like to speak on this?
Teresa Madison, 93 Davis.
Okay,
A few questions.
sure.
I want to start off with the first question. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but we just were at town meeting on Saturday, and these additional licenses were passed over. An HCA is a vehicle to a license. You give out an HCA, that is a promise to a license. You've already given.
That is not correct. An HCA is not a promise to a license. An HCA is,
To a license. If somebody's going to go out and they're going to get a property and they're going to expend thousands and thousands of dollars to get to that end, and you get to that end and you say, sorry, we don't have any more licenses to give, now where's the litigation in that? So what I'm asking is, this was just passed over on Saturday. So are you going to act on your own and not listen to the townspeople? Or are you going to wait and put this on another agenda or town's meeting in November, so on and so forth, and see what the townspeople have to say?
so, all right, hold on. You want to ask a question, I'll answer each one of your questions individually, but you're not going to sit here and do to me what you do to the planning board and talk over me. That's just not going to happen. Number one, you are absolutely incorrect that a host community agreement is a promise for a license. We had our attorney go through that, explain the entire process to it. It by in no way, shape, or form is a promise saying that you will be able to open and operate a business within Douglas being licensed for marijuana. That's number one. Number two, we passed over the article adding additional licenses at the request of the police chief, not doing anything, hiding it from the townspeople, because we don't even have one license issued in the town of Douglas as of yet. and the police chief is asked to see, let's see how the first 2 or 3 go before we start looking at adding more. So what is your third question?
So my other question is Flying Goose is saying that there's 3 HCA's out there and only one person has put in for one. You cannot go before the CCC unless you have an established address. So I have an established address, so I put forth I have my provisional. When I establish my second address is when I can go before my second provisional, as they know. You cannot go before the CCC unless you have an address. And now since Matt brought up the subject of that other property, and the gentleman that's sitting at the table said about what about somebody that has an HCA before everybody else? Yes, what is your responsibility to the 3 people that have already been before you, that have already held these things for months, waiting for another piece of property? Are you just gonna forego us?
Well, the thing is that the land going through, is it the, what was the process, 30B?
It's a competitive bid process.
With a scoring
To win
system.
it, you need to follow the score sheet and put your best foot forward. But there's no promise to anyone in a competitive bid process. It's open for everybody who is qualified to submit a package, and the board will review the packages and score them accordingly.
Absolutely, and one of those requirements is the permits and the law, the length of time it's going to take to get those. Well, I already have the HCA, so that's that. And to get a provisional, as soon as I put an address on that HCA, then I get my provisional within 30 days. So who can get there faster? The person that's been there first.
And we're not gonna prosecute an open bid process in a meeting.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But
No,
what
well,
I'm saying
but
is
you're not gonna score your own proposal either.
You went on and stated that you had 24 months for the original HCA's that are out there to move forward. So you're not even giving us our 24 due process before you give out a 4th one to somebody else.
Well, here,
Well, we don't,
Yeah, but you haven't given us our 24 months.
I don't think there's any restriction on us giving out further HCA's based on the time that the current holders have that. I'm not aware of any restriction. You may have time constraints, but that doesn't prohibit the town from issuing additional HCA's.
correct.
So what happens to 148 Webster that already has an HCA? And if you give out another HCA and you get to the end, now you're going to tell 148, sorry, we gave your license away?
I'm going to go back to what we discussed in your first question, is that no one has any lock or right or promise to a license. It's a competitive process. Quite frankly, I don't understand what you're saying.
In order to get to the license, you have to have an HCA. An HCA,
Right.
you can go before the CCC and get your provisional, get your building up and running, have your walkthrough, and be licensed. So what I'm saying is you already gave out 3 HCA's, 2 to me and 1 to 148 Webster. So now you want to give out a 4th one. What happens to 148 Webster now? If these people, you give them an HCA, and now they go out and they get there, say, a month before 148, now you're going to tell 148 who's had one since the beginning of the year, sorry, we don't have a license to give you? That's why the HCA is attached to the license. It's the vehicle to the license.
Well, it's the vehicle to the license through the Cannabis Commission, and it's also a vehicle to a license through the town of Douglas. And if 148 Webster Street has a host community agreement and they've opted to do absolutely nothing with it, with moving forward and putting a building in, the town is supposed to obstruct commerce and allow other businesses to come in because they don't have a business plan? Because that's absurd.
You gave us 24 months to get there. You said it on your meeting that we all have 24 months. So don't you, are you obligated to give them 24 months to see if they can fulfill their obligation, just like the land that's up for bid right now? It has to be done between 18 and 24 months.
And if a business outside of cannabis comes in and buys the land that's up for the process right now, and they build a warehouse on it in 6 months, we're going to score them higher than a cannabis facility. So, I mean, it's apples and oranges, and I mean, I think that the best avenue that you could take is You know, I mean, I understand that you're trying to look into, you know, how many host community agreements that we're putting out there. Right now, in talking with Flying Goose, and we've all come to a general consensus on the board, is that we're more than happy to enter into an HCA with them as it pertains to cultivation and manufacturing, which wouldn't impact your retail establishment at all. It would probably augment it, as it would give you a place to buy from, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
I said, right now, what's in front of the board and what we're discussing with Flying Goose is an HCA for cultivation and manufacturing, which you should probably be thanking us for, because you're opening as a retail facility, and this would be an avenue for you to purchase product.
No, I already had a discussion with them about going into business with them, and we both agreed it was not going to happen. We both agreed it wasn't a good fit.
All right, but that's your choice and their choice, your being the plural sense. That doesn't block anything here.
Manufacturing and cultivating is not an issue.
When we talked about time limits and HCA's, I don't think there was any interpretation, and I don't think there was any intention that that would lock other people out for that 24-month period. You need an HCA in order to get a license. Everyone who gets an HCA is not guaranteed a license. I think we're all very clear on that. When we talked about a time period, it doesn't mean that we're going to lock out the rest of the world during that time period. Am I correct, or am I misspeaking? That certainly wasn't my recollection of it.
That, I believe, is how I can't remember, Kate, was it Federoff? That's how she had explained it to us, is that we're not going to be locking anyone else on.
Right.
And we're not beholden to anyone to issue them a license.
I would say off the top of my head, that almost sounds anti-competitive to be doing that.
Yes.
When I was on a meeting with you with Attorney Weiner, and I went through when I explained the difference with the HCA's as a vehicle to the license, he did not correct me, he actually sided with me.
Who's Attorney Weiner?
I don't want to side with the proponent, but she's right.
Well, Attorney Winter works for the town. If he's in error, you can correct him.
You gave your first 3 HCA's 24 months to perform. Where is the responsibility to them, and where is your responsibility to townspeople to vote on whether you want to give more licenses or not?
The concept of, I think we've already addressed this. At this point in time, at the request of the police chief, we are not pursuing any additional licenses above and beyond the 3 that we had originally put into our town bylaws. So there's nothing to put in front of the town to ask for additional licensing. So also, when we had started going into the whole recreational marijuana and cultivation, it's at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen as to who we choose or not choose to issue a license to. It doesn't go to town meeting for a vote, and it certainly doesn't go to town meeting for an appeal. The proverbial buck stops here with us 5.
So the manufacturing and the cultivating is not the issue. It is the retail.
Let me say this. Kevin and I were the first subcommittee that worked on the first cannabis agreement with what is now Resonate, which seems like a long time ago.
100 years.
It does seem like that. You might even be short. I overcame some personal disagreements with the idea to try to do what was best for the town, and I think we did that. This is getting to the point now where it's taking up a lot of our time on this board and a lot of other time, other boards' times, I should say, and there seems to be a lot of infighting. I point no fingers, I'm not talking about any one or any group in particular, but if this is just going to be a constant battle, and if it's going to be what I consider to be a litigation magnet, perhaps it's time to reconsider.
Well, I mean, we had addressed the potential fears of litigation through counsel, specifically, who is very clear, and I believe has consulted with the Cannabis Commission on multiple occasions. And I don't believe that there's any opportunity for the town to have litigation coming on to us as it pertains to the way that we wrote this, because we asked counsel to write it under the proviso and guidance of the CCC. I think the long story short here is where people's concerns are coming in is this whole 24-month thing. It incentivizes a business owner to have a solid business plan, a good builder that's sitting behind them, get through all of your permitting, your engineering, your zoning, find your property, and be expeditious in your process of getting a building up, and you won't have to worry about being somebody that may be turned away for a license.
I'll expand on what was said earlier, and I forget who said it. It was at this table, the fact that we're kind of learning here, because this is a new process for every town and not just that town. And I know we followed our learned counsel's advice to the letter, and I know we followed all the rules and regulations to the letter. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be litigation, because this is a new field, and there's probably zero case law that I've seen that has anything to do with it. So it just seems to me the farther we go down this road now, the more complex it gets and the more dissension and confrontation we have. I would like the process to operate more smoothly if I could wave my magic wand and make that happen, but that doesn't seem possible.
You left that in your other suit.
I did, yeah.
That magic wand is being above board and fulfilling promises that you put forth.
I'm not,
You have to uphold it. That's what it comes down to.
All right,
I'm not aware that we made
I
any
guess the
promises.
lesson learned is that these are not public hearings, you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, the flying goose is on your agenda, but this ongoing debate, listen, I'll try to back the board up as best I can. Competition is competition. If you run a baseball team, and you got 5 kids that want to pitch, and you only have 4 starting slots, they're gonna bellyache about each other. They're gonna harp on that one bad day that the other pitcher has. There's gonna be constant pressure from people who are in competition to try to bully you to go to one direction or the other. You've already stated your principles over and over again as a board. An HCA is not a promise to a license. You gotta get your work done before you can get a license. You can't get a license from the town of Douglas until you have a license from CCC. So all of this conversation is just that, palaver. Nothing is before the board for anybody to get a license. The only thing before the Board of Selectmen is an HCA proposal. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is let's just move on, designate a couple of members of the board to work with me to negotiate with Flying Goose. It's the shortest negotiation on the planet Earth because it's a template with boilerplate language, unless they have objections to some proviso, and just move on from there. And anybody wants to put their stake in the ground, they have to build their own stake, dig their own hole, and put it in there, because there's nothing before the board. There are 3 potential licenses, 0 have issued. So it's up to the industry to get moving and stop coming to meetings to debate the finer points. Just get the work done, and you might just get a license.
All said.
Yes.
That's what we would like to do, and that's why we're here tonight.
If I can say one thing about this, I just want to go on record, if that's possible, to say, you know, we didn't come into Douglas to have conflict and, you know, try to steal other people's lunch or anything like that. When we initially came in, we had 116 Davis Street, we had that property under control, and we asked for all 3 host agreements, of which we're ready, willing, and able to operate. And we've gone through the provisional license process 4 times successfully. We have the money and we have the location to have the retail location, right at 116 Davis. And since our last meeting in the spring, Z&T had some concern that we were too close to them, even though in the ordinance there was nothing there. So we said, if that's the case, that's fine. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to come into Douglas and get into bumping heads with other people in the industry. There's no reason for that. So that's not our intention. We're not trying to come here and take over. But the only point I just want to make, and then I understand we're kind of belaboring the point, is that yes, I understand that it does take time to go to the state, but after 9 months, there should be some movement. We haven't ever waited 9 months to go from post agreement to provisional license application being submitted. And that was the only point I wanted to make. We're not here to jump in anybody else's spot, but there has to be accountability for all of the licenses or the HCA holders at some point. That's my opinion, humbly, if I may.
thank you. All right, I mean, I think we've, you know, pardon the expression, I think we beat the hell out of this.
I think we have as well. So I'm comfortable with moving forward and negotiating the HCA.
All right, so I have a motion on the table from Mr. Hughes. Now, question,
Cultivate and
for
a,
cultivation and manufacturing.
For that.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. So we have a motion that has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion from the board? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Hughes, aye.
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Stevens, aye.
Morse, aye. All right, so we're willing to do that. We
Thank you,
will
gentlemen.
designate a couple of members of the board to sit down and negotiate or work with Matt to negotiate, which is, as Matt said, it's a boilerplate form,
Sounds easy.
and go through the terms and conditions on an HCA for manufacturing and cultivation.
Sounds great.
All
I
right?
appryour it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Good night.
Thank you.
As far as the retail is concerned, are we gonna hold off on that, or how we, can we put that at 116 Davis as well?
So could I ask that we pause on that, because I would like to follow back up with our council.
Well, again, the strategy was to build a market for the Webster Street property that you're trying to sell.
Yes.
And that closes September 21st.
So could we ask that we do that after September 21st?
Absolutely, yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I can't get used to this.
Yeah,
All right.
where's Mitch? We need another one.
I know.
Right there, a little
What if they
one.
turn that one on?
Do you want me to put one over there? I got a small TV. I can put it over there.
Actually, if you turn that one on, that may work.
We can do that. Whatever you guys want, whatever's going to
Well,
make
it's
it
David,
easier.
it's making David feel comfortable.
It's all about,
Wondering why the town administrator moved now.
Well, because now the camera, that voice coming from off camera is just weird, man. So I'm
I
trying
like it. It's kind of
to
like
get back
Oz.
so that he can move the camera over here.
We're going to refer to you as Oz from now on.
Man behind the curtain.
All right, so we have the Board of Selectmen designation to the EDC project and possible votes, and I see Mr. Monerick sitting back there patiently,
Yes.
Yeah, but-
very anxious.
So let's, the crux of the issue is this, that from time to time, we are busy with specific project proposals, and we start to get to the point where there are procedural requirements, things that may require negotiation, or for a member of the board or more than one member of the board to be well apprised of the facts of what's going on. And we have defaulted to date to Selectman Davis, who, from a whole successful lifetime career in the economic development field, is your resident expert. I just wanted to put it back in front of the five of you. Is Hal comfortable with how much time he's spending? Does he have that kind of time to spend? Are there other members of the board who want to be involved in different project proposals? So this past week, for example, state officials called and said that they had, and all these things have code names, right? This is like James Bond, right? Project whatever, product rhododendron has, an interest in some number of warehouse or manufacturing sites in southern Worcester County, and Douglas is on the short list. You want to respond. And oh, by the way, it's 15 pages of questions and you have 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very hard to get far into that conversation without feeling like, well, ultimately the Board of Selectmen needs to be involved in this conversation, because there's a lot of commitments that the project proponent's looking for in terms of TIFs and other utility extensions and other things. So it's not just the Board of Selectmen, it's also the water commissioners. Everybody would have to be all hands on deck to make these things turn around in 4 days. 15 pages of questions is probably 30 pages of answers. It's a tremendous amount of work. Now, we short-circuited it because, much to our disappointment, and I'll be writing I won't be writing anything down. I'll be having a long conversation with our senator and our rep about the way we were treated by the state, because they did not do their homework. The piece of property that they called us about is not actually in Douglas. Only a portion of it is in Douglas, and a minority portion. It's one of our sister communities is the majority player, and they had not been informed, and they have a huge zoning problem. They can't actually build the project that they're proposing in that town until they change their zoning. So we were going to spend all this time burning midnight oil to answer a request for information that was related to a lot that's not buildable for the project at hand. So they really did a terrible job at the state. They should have thought this through, and they could have at least made one phone call, and they would have avoided all this. But it brought up the issue, and I think we have other potential proposals down the line. And I spend a lot of time with Bob. Bill Cundiff spends a lot of time with Bob. Bob's working very hard on all of these things, but I just want to know that the board's comfort level, I mean, are we defaulting to Selectman Davis? Do you want to have a conversation on a case-by-case basis? How do you want to go about this? Because spreading the wealth around the board is one way to stay engaged in what's going on. But as soon as you designate a formal subcommittee, then it's Open Meetings Act, and you're kind of blown it. You know, we need that go-to person that we can talk to and keep informed. And when it does come to the board for real action, that needs to be in an open meeting context. You've got a resident expert who can speak to it.
So before I weigh in, Hal, how do you feel about this?
Well, I'm happy. I think I've got sufficient time to work on it. I think we're, beginning to review the procedures for a business that's coming to Douglas, and to be able to help them through the permitting process, maybe having an initial meeting with fire, police, engineering, et cetera. We're in the process, I think, of studying what other neighboring towns are doing, so we regularize the process to make it easy for the town and anybody coming into town or wanting to expand in town. So once we have that set up, I think the time demands on me would be acceptable.
I feel more than comfortable with Hal being our resident expert.
How about you, Tim?
Well, as my alternate to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, I know he has time. Yeah, Hal's the best.
I certainly don't have any reservations with Hal. I just want to reserve the right if there were a project that had a personal interest, that's something I could help on. I just want to jump in as necessary, but I certainly trust Hal to do the best by the town without any reservations at all.
I agree.
Yeah, we're not obviously going to do anything to bind the town.
Right.
I would be the front person, so to speak, and maybe taking a mile-high view of the project and the pluses and minuses, and then get back to you guys.
I like it.
I'm all for it.
Cool. Who wants to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Hughes, aye.
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. All right. And put it in the minutes that the world's most interesting selectman is our designee for...
And actually, you may want to tap into a wealth of knowledge with planning.
Regional planning.
Yeah, regional planning, in case that becomes productive.
You know it's going to be certainly plugged in, and will be able to share with me all of the wisdom he picks up at the numerous meetings.
Hal, I thought we were tight.
To go to the big city in Worcester.
Thanks for your commitment, Hal.
Exactly.
Yours too, Tim.
As always, thank you for your commitment, Tim.
It's-
All right. Signed grant of easement for West...
Thank God we have Bob Manara. The fly bird world, and he's been doing a great job helping us out.
Here, here.
So any projects that have to do with Bob Manarick are going to be Operation Condor. All right. Next item on the agenda is the signed grant of easement for West Street approved at September 12th annual town meeting and possible vote.
What do we have to vote on?
If town meeting approved it, why are we?
Yeah, I don't think we need to.
Suzanne sent us an email. What did that
I
say?
don't think there's
It
any
said that we have to
She's
vote.
already been approved.
No, it's already been approved. She says that. She's asking you to sign it.
Yeah, I think that's all we need to do.
All right.
I move that we sign the approval.
A second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's the last thing on the signature pile. Approved minutes.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the August 25th, 2020 regular meeting minutes, as well as December 1st, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Oh,
I'll second.
I would point out she uses a different font. Our new recording secretary, actually.
She's coming out hot. Brand new font and everything.
That was the most shocking news Douglas had.
Right up there.
Hey, you.
All right, so a motion was made and seconded? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing as none, nobody abstained. Moving on to your report, Mr. Administrator.
Well, hold it.
Yeah.
We need to approve the executive session minutes from our September 1st, 2020 meeting.
I stand corrected.
And I just want to comment on what a stellar job Mr. Bonin did in taking these minutes. Since he can't operate a recorder, he did a great job with
I was waiting.
As I recall, we had 14 good seconds of the meeting.
Yeah. That was, I have to tell you. So I got up early that day, right? Baseball season, you got to get your work done so you can go play. So I was up at 6:30, had my coffee, I'm banging out a bunch of work, and I get that email around like 8 that we forgot to push the button. So we halted the work to get that done because I didn't know if I was going to retain what I was able to retain, and I just want to give a shout out to the tape recorder because that thing is invaluable.
So we have a motion to approve the executive session minutes,
Second.
and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now your report, Mr. Administrator. Have a good night,
you,
Bob.
Thank you.
We always need you, Bob,
But not tonight.
but not tonight.
Mr. Chairman, thanks to everybody who worked to get town meeting off without really a hitch. I mean, I do think it was the right thing to do to put it off. We were fortunate that the weather cooperated. But the town transacted a lot of business, and we didn't just do the financial stuff. We got through a lot of the agenda. Having said that, they teach us at Town Administrator Finishing School that town administrators are like children. We're best when we're seen and not heard. So I wasn't going to jump up every time I heard a loose end or a comment that might have been slightly off, because I have this opportunity as a report to go through a few things to make sure everybody understands. So I'll try to make it very concise. I do have notes, which should help. The Cedar Street Bridge warrant article was passed over. There are takings involved in realigning that bridge and widening that bridge. You know, it's going to be realigned so that some of the sight lines are improved. As you come around that corner, I'm trying to remember if there's a pole there or not. I'm pretty sure there's a pole there, but
It juts out.
you really have to make decisions fairly quickly. You also have to make decisions fairly quickly if you're coming off Webster Street, because people really fly on that road and you're trying to turn down there. And I've made some bad decisions, so I have long scrape marks on the side of my Kia Sorento to prove that I know that Cedar Street Bridge needs to be widened. But this was passed over because the tax assessor provided estimates of value for the small pieces of lots that are to be taken as part of the roadway construction. But the statute calls for an appraisal. So the assessor is going to give you the per square foot value on those lots and say, well, if you carved 1,000 feet or 100 feet off of that lot, you pay them for what the whole lot's worth on a per square foot basis. Sounds fair. It's not. An appraiser has got the professional certification to come in and say, well, what, even if it's a small taking, what impact will that have on the value of the entire lot now that its configuration has changed? That is why we have to have an appraiser look at this. The way the bid package was put together with the engineering firm has the authority to hire an appraiser and to finalize those numbers. So that's what's going on right now. The engineering firm that's building the bid package is taking those steps. The bid package has been out. I've used the word out in other meetings, and I think it's been misinterpreted. The bid package went to Mass DOT for final approval, and it's come back with very minor comments. The timing on this bid package, procurement is a science, but it's also an art. You want to place your work into the marketplace at the most opportune time. Right now, this fall, the major roadway and bridge construction firms are saying things are very slow. We absolutely want to go to November special town meeting with the takings warrant article and try to get approval from town meeting, because if we can hit the street with the bid package in late November, early December, we're going to get a really good price on this bridge. So what you heard tonight was, we got a grant, a $500,000 grant, and anything that we can't fund with the grant, we would fund with Chapter 90. If we get a good low bid come in from a reputable firm and we can get the work done, it's going to save Chapter 90 funds. So that's the objective. This project has multiple moving parts. My second note from town meeting people speak under the pressure of being in a microphone, addressing the whole town, even if there's only so many people at the meeting, they're still very cognizant of the fact that they're being recorded, they're on camera, they're going to be viewed by lots of people, and sometimes things get a little bit lost in the translation. When Chief Vincent was reviewing where we were in our pandemic response when a bunch of people got sick, let there be no doubt that everybody who was still involved really stepped up to the plate. So our full-time fire staff went one day on, one day off, one day on, one day off, just to keep 2 ambulances going. So our compliments to the full-time staff, compliments to Captain Furno, who not only stood up to be the highway superintendent while John was sick, but also was acting fire chief. And not everybody knows this or appreciates it, but he's one of the few people in town who has a certain level of water operator license. So even though Mr. Sullivan did not take sick at the water treatment plant, Adam's got like 3 big hats on, so he did a fabulous job. So what Kent was pointing to is we got to the point where we had 1 key person left. So if Captain Furno, unfortunately, if he had the unfortunate circumstance of having come down ill, he was covering all of our bases. Right. And that's what we want to avoid. That was one of the things that we, in an after-action briefing, we said we can't get to the point where everything funnels down to 1 person, and we're hoping that the 1 person who, by the way, was exposed in a number of different ways to different people who were ill, if he had gotten ill, we would have been in a really bad spot. And it was just more insulation, more protection. That was the context of that conversation. But everybody who was involved, and we had police officers who got sick at the same time who were out with COVID. So everybody who stepped up and did a fabulous job of protecting this town, Captain Furno and all of the firefighters, especially since they were so hard hit. I just wanted to make sure that point wasn't lost in the bigger conversation about funding for positions and whatnot. Town meeting voted to approve the compensation table, and with it, there was a non-union COLA of 1.75%. That's the way the article was phrased. But throughout the budget conversation, I hope everybody realizes that the COLA restoration was for both our unionized public safety personnel as well as our non-union staff. The union question was not in front of town meeting because it doesn't go to town meeting. We had MOUs from the police union and from the fire union to not provide them with a COLA if we needed it, and we had an open discussion about our negotiation strategy and a relationship with collective bargaining units. If we don't need their help, we're not going to take it. So their COLA is going to be restored for this year at the same level, 1.75%. That's in their contract. That's what they negotiated for. So we're going to give that back to them. I suppose we'll have to do an MOU to undo the old MOU and the heap of formality that we have. But I just wanted to, there were some questions that came to me today that indicated maybe some of the union folks figured that they were still at 0 and everybody else got 1, and that's not what happened. It's different with the other department, with the school department, because that's just a separate issue entirely. Mrs. Chesbro asked, what is the difference between a deputy chief and the assistant chief? And Chief Vincent partially answered the question, but I would put a finer point on the answer. The deputy chief is a call, member of the management staff on the call side. That's incident command. When John Furno arrives at the scene and he's there first, he gets there before the chief, he's running the scene. If it's let's call it a structure fire, because that's what we all think of, right? He's in charge. When Chief Vincent shows up, he knows that his role as deputy chief is he does what's called operations, which is one of the incident management sections that reports to an incident. And that's a relationship that they understand between each other. But just because he has that significant role, he is not a day-to-day manager in the fire department. He is the day-to-day superintendent of the highway department, and that is his responsibility. He does serve as a witness in disciplinary hearings. He does participate in interviews, but he is not a day-to-day presence in the management of the fire department, and that was by design, because managing call firefighters and keeping their morale and keeping them focused involves having a member of the leadership team that's also a call firefighter. The assistant is a full-time position, and that's what was requested. So that's the difference between the two, is that somebody is on scene all day interacting with the people who work there, and the other role is incident command as needed. I also just want to make one point clear. The assistant chief position that was approved by town meeting is a non-union position. It is not eligible for overtime. And I just want to make sure that people understand that. Next on my list, getting the schools ready to open. Our role on the town side has been to provide some guidance and some support on personal protective equipment. If the schools stay open this entire year, the purchase of PPE, so-called, will be the single largest supply contract in the town. Bigger than anything else, bigger than food program at the schools, bigger than our fuel program, far larger than twice the size of our fuel program.
Sand and salt?
Close.
Okay.
But when you look at the snow and ice budget, a big portion of that is the labor. It's the hourly rate for the person driving the truck. And it depends on the winter, too. If we have a bad winter, that's our biggest involvement. So where are we? The building official is nearly signed off. I think it might be a couple of small loose ends at the schools. On the PPE, we've taken delivery on over $37,000 worth of stuff already, and I've distributed about half of that to the buildings. Just so everybody understands, it is complicated to fit people with respirators. So the last piece of this is to make sure that everybody who needs to wear an N95 gets a fit test, and then we will order N95s accordingly to fit the person as their fit test. So our Safety First consultant that's worked with us on our OSHA compliance all over town government is going up to the schools, I believe it's September 23rd, to fit test everyone who is going to need an N95 mask. In the intervening time, I don't want to call it a one-size-fits-all. It's a one size that fits many. It's an N95 with a metal band, and you fold it across your nose. That's what they have to protect themselves in the intervening time. But inventory management is going smoothly. We've delivered everything. The supply chain is wackadoo. There are days when you can buy gloves and get them delivered the next day, and the next day comes and they get the notice in your email first thing in the morning, oh, sorry, it's going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's been going on a lot. Gloves seem to be the big problem.
Yeah. It's going to be tricky, Matt.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
So we're monitoring it, but we're trying to stay ahead. Coming up, okay, 3 more items here. Coming up, we have some tax sales. We're doing a bit of a different strategy. So I think in the past, a lot would get foreclosed. There would be an attempt to sell them as a group or to just sell them as raw land. This time, we're going out to do perk tests to make sure they're buildable lots, try to sell them as individual buildable lots. And there's a parcel on Wallam Lake Road that has been subdivided by the town to be basically a rural residential compound with 3 lots on it, and they'll all be perk tested. So the auctioneer is going to be selling things that are a little bit further down the approval line than typical, with the hope that we command a better value. That will be announced fairly soon, so people will see that. There's 3 lots on Chestnut Street and 3 lots on Wallam Lake that we think are probably the most suitable parcels for somebody to buy. Webster Street, the town's property there, those bids close next week. So we'll close, what we'll do is we'll open the packages. There's a price component. The math for the price, scoring the price component was fairly clear. You get up to 100 points. If you're the highest number, you get 100 points. Everybody else, it's whatever portion of the highest number you were. So if somebody bids 200, somebody bids 100, you get 100 points for the 200, and you get 100 is 50% of 200, you get 50 points for the second bid. Does everybody understand how that's going to work? And then the qualitative measures will come to the Board of Selectmen to grade. One important caveat, I think we have to ask Rich Bowen what his opinion is, but I think you do that in open session because there isn't any protected material that you're going to be discussing. And our bidders need to be aware of the fact that there is no protection for any commercial competitive position they take in these bid packages. The bid packages are public. The last thing I have is a question. The MMA letter, is it ready to be sent? Does it need to be sent?
I think it's missing one signature.
One signature, and do you want to shop at the other towns still?
Oh, I
or-
plan to. Yeah, I
Okay.
was just waiting for
Are you
the,
waiting for it to be signed?
yeah.
All right, so let me know after whose signature you need, and we'll make sure we try to get it.
Where is that?
Is it Hal?
Al.
Yeah. Do you think you can schedule some?
I can stop by tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Hal.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah.
That's my report, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay.
10 minutes, not too bad.
Any open session topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting?
Well, probably violates the anticipation rule. Before the town meeting went off well, it's a sort of memorable event, and everybody that did all the physical things necessary to make it happen deserves the tip of the hat.
Absolutely, Hal. In great weather, too.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
All right. Seeing as we got nothing else, looking for one of your motions, Mr. Bonin.
All right, look to leave oh dear.
Hold on, rewind. Let's hope nobody had their finger on the record button.
I want to make a motion that we move into executive session for the purposes of litigation, then to leave that executive session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
I will second that very well worded motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Hughes, aye.
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
To a different room or stay where you are?
We're going to go into the selectman's office, and I can call you on my cell and put you on speaker.
All right, you can call me the 508-476-3900 number.
Hal, like all 15 people that watch this now have your number.
It's like the ad for the woman is broadcasting her social security number.
All right.
I voted aye.
You voted aye?
I did.
You vote aye? Davis, aye. I think he said.
Yeah.
Morris, aye. All right. We'll see you.